knowledge. First up, we have a special guest, Bailey Boundary, an expert in boundaryology. He will be answering some questions about tectonic plate boundaries. Pleased to have you here, Bailey.
Hello, Tara. I'm pleased to meet you as well. I'm very passionate about plate boundaries, but don't worry, I won't get sentimental.
It wouldn't be your fault. So today, I will be asking you some questions about plate boundaries. But before that, could you explain what plates are to our guests?
Sure thing. Plates are flat masses of rock that float on the mantle. There are two types, oceanic and continental.
And they move around, I presume?
Yes, they do. Convection currents in the mantle layer of our Earth power the plates. And because they move around, they form boundaries, which is what we will be talking about today.
Okay, now that our viewers have a general understanding of plates, let's get to the core of this matter. Explain the type of boundary. Explain the type of boundary where plates move together.
Well, Tara, those are called convergent boundaries. And there are three types of convergent boundaries. Continental versus continental, continental versus oceanic, and oceanic versus oceanic.
Okay, well, let's start off with the continental versus continental convergent boundaries. Could you give us some knowledge on that?
In the continental versus continental boundary, two continental plates collide with each other and forces each other's edges up to form mountain ranges. The Himalayas, which houses the tallest mountain on planet Earth, is an example of this.
Oh, like the Indian plate pushing into the Eurasian plate?
Yes, exactly.
That's cool. So how about the oceanic versus continental convergent boundary?
Well, in this case, the denser oceanic plate goes under the more buoyant continental plate. This process is called subduction. When the oceanic plate subducts far into the Earth, it enters the mantle and becomes magma once again. The place where a plate subducts is called the subduction zone. Also, when an oceanic plate sinks, it squeezes up magmas to create volcanoes.
I didn't know that about volcanoes. You just blew my mind.
Ha ha. It not only squeezes up magma, but also pushes against the continental plate to create mountains, similar to what two continental plates would do to each other, except the oceanic plate sinks. There's also a trench over the subduction zone where a void is left in place instead of a more continental crust. Another side effect of these types of boundaries is earthquakes.
Earthquakes? I'm shaking with fear. And what about oceanic versus oceanic conversion boundaries?
The plate that is older subducts because it is cooler, and cooler equals denser. Volcanic mountains emerge from the water and create island arcs. Things like the Aleutian Islands in Alaska and the Hawaiian Islands are island arcs. Everything else is much the same as the continental versus oceanic convergent boundary.
Thanks for all that information. What boundary type will you dig up next?
Divergent boundaries. Whereas crust gets subducted into the earth at certain convergent boundaries and gets destroyed, divergent boundaries are where new crust is made. This is why the earth does not become any larger or smaller in size. When two tectonic plates move apart, magma flows up and cools in the cold ocean depth, creating new crust. Sometimes the magma flows too quickly for the two plates to spread apart, and then they build up to create mid-ocean ridges, essentially underwater mountain ranges. Also, as you probably already know, the two oceanic plates split apart, and that process is named sea floor spreading. In fact, the Atlantic Ocean is actually getting bigger because of this. And in the Atlantic Ocean, there is a vast mid-ocean ridge called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Now, there aren't only divergent boundaries in water, and on land, the two plates moving apart leave a giant crack called rift valleys.
Thank you, Bailey Boundary. Now, time for a short commercial break. Stay tuned for more on transform boundaries.
There are many natural disasters,
Like
such as
magma.
volcanoes. There are earthquakes.
The poor girl can't even enjoy her fun dip. So what are you waiting for? Donate for the greater good. Call 1-800-555-333 and donate now.
In a world where the earth is the world, comes this season's new heated drama.
It was his fault the conversation eroded. He assumed I had too much on my plate, but that wasn't what I said it meant.
You should have been bolder, Pebble Brain.
Drama.
He cheated with you, you crusty hag.
Drama.
Now he drifted apart from both of us to different continents.
And more drama.
Go jump in the trench.
Oh no, you didn't say that to me. I am about to blow my top off.
You're a man.
Get ready for The Real Housewives of Earth, coming to your Tectonic plate soon. Sundays at 9 Central, only on the Earth Network.
And welcome back. We're interviewing Bailey Boundaries here about tectonic plate boundaries. Let's continue talking about how much geology rocks with transform boundaries.
Alright, transform boundaries are where one plate slides past another at a fault line. These plates are notorious for their earthquakes. The reason this type of boundary has so many earthquakes is because the plates aren't perfectly smooth. So they get stuck on one each other a lot, building stress. Once the convection currents of moving the plates overcomes the stress of the locking of the plates go boom, and the stress is released for the plates were stuck. The energy ripples around the boundary, shaking everything. And I'm fairly sure we all know that California gets a lot of earthquakes. The reason for that is the San Andreas Fault, which is a transform boundary. And now, I believe we have gone through all the types of plate boundaries.
Thank goodness. I mean, thank you for all that information. I'm sure we all learned a lot. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Same here.
Next up, we'll talk about the recent election and how our new president won by a landslide, and also how our Congress erupted into chaos. Stay tuned.